Hello, I'm Robert Royal, and this is a podcast of The Catholic Thing. We're recording from Rome. It's October 22nd, I believe, today. We're in the last week of the Synod on Synodality. And I was casting around trying to decide who we could find that might give us a very different angle on the Synod, because it's been covered from all sorts of different angles. And it came to me that if there is one long-term observer who I would like to hear from, I might even say the grand dame of Roman Vaticanists, it was my longtime friend Joan Lewis, who we're very happy is joining us today, also here in Rome, in this podcast. Joan, good to see you again. We were at a dinner the other night, but you were kind of way down the table, so I wasn't able to talk much with you. But I guess my wife was able
Yeah. Yeah, we couldn't
to.
do any Synod stuff over dinner, so we just had to enjoy an exquisite meal in a beautiful setting.
Right.
Yeah,
Before
so
we
it's
get
great to
into our
be with you
topic
here.
today, okay, I'm looking at that beautiful tapestry behind you. Can you tell us just quickly what that is?
Okay, I'll move this a little
Yeah.
bit. Now, this is about 6 feet long of the tapestry in Florence. And I found that I knew cover this wall with a bigger tapestry. And it figures right above my head is Geoffrey of Bouillon, founder of the Order of the Holy Sepulchre, and I'm a dame of the order, so this already meant a lot to me. What you really can't see is the beautiful quality of this. It's very, very thick. It's a Flemish tapestry, and one of my prized possessions. It shows him about to go off to conflict, and his wife and some handmaidens are in the picture, each of whom is carrying something he will bring into battle, spiritual and otherwise. So it's
Right.
something I treasure a great deal, and I've had a lot of offers on it. So,
So Godfrey of
but you can
Bouillon
enjoy a meal. Mine,
is
look at that. Yeah.
Godfrey of Bouillon is the general who took back Jerusalem for a while from the Muslim
Yes.
invaders, right? Just so our viewers and our listeners know about that. Well, this just goes to show you how deep our
Exactly.
Catholicism runs. That it's thousands of years that we have behind us. Which brings me back to the
Yeah.
subject at hand. Before we get into the specifics about this synod, I wanted to ask you something because a lot of people have complained about the boring nature of this synod. And you've been to a lot of these and you've covered a lot of them in a variety of ways. And I want to ask you what I think is an interesting question, and I'd like to get your answer to, because I've heard from friends in the past that the older formats of the synods were quite boring, that there were these speeches that had been prepared, that people got up and delivered these long speeches. There was no real interaction. People fell asleep. My late friend, Father Richard John Newhouse, actually wrote a book during one of these synods because so little was going on that was of interest. Is that a fair characterization of the way things used to be? And as I understand that the speeches used to be published, the
I
texts used
suppose
to
in
be
some
published.
ways it is, and
Yeah, go on. Go ahead.
exactly. Well, Bob, I mean, I worked at the Vatican Information Service for quite a number of synods. And at that time, first of all, it was only bishops. I mean, there were, people from other religions who were present in many of the meetings. But the synod fathers were asked to send to the Vatican their full speech. It was supposed to be like 3 or 4 minutes, and a one-page summary of that speech. Well, we at the Vatican Information Service then, every morning there were 15, 17, however many people spoke, and then the same thing in the afternoon. People spoke. There was a very clear agenda. You knew who was going to speak at 9 and 9:10 and 9:20. Anyway, we got the one-page summaries that each bishop sent to the Vatican, and then we wrote our summary of that. And so you had an idea at the end of a morning, at the end of an afternoon, the points that the various synod fathers want to make. And of course, the important thing was we had the name. This was Bishop or Cardinal so and so and their diocese and their country. So a picture grew out of, you might even say by continent, a picture grew of whatever the topic was of that synod, of what the church in that diocese and that continent wanted to say to the Vatican, to the entire world, via a synod of bishops. And I suppose that could be kind of fatiguing to sit every day and hear 17 people in the morning and 18 people in the afternoon, and they all had a few minutes. And the only time they kind of had with each other, like unlike the current one, would be at a coffee break or obviously over a meal. But yes, every single thing was published. We published it in our daily newsletter sent all around the world to lay people and bishops. And then the Vatican published it in the Osservatore Romano. And the thing is, with today's, the way they've organized it, all these individual tables with about 11 people in the Synod Hall, 11 people at a table, the same 11 at every table every day, that you know what's happening in your group. But unless someone from another group gets up and actually asks to address the Synod, you're not going to know, unless it's coffee break time, what is being proposed and pondered over and commented on at other tables. So we who sit out here, you and I and every journalist covering this, they might know what's happening because they will have had access to a bishop, to a layperson. And in this case, of course, we know there's many women present in this synod. But there's very little transparency. I can't tell you
Yeah, that's
how
the
many people
irony.
have told me that. That's the
Yeah,
thing. That's
it's the
what most
irony
bothers
of
them.
yeah, it's the irony that from one point of view, you could say that the earlier format was more open to the world than the format that we have right
Well,
now.
but
And the rationale that keeps being given is that this protects people so that they can speak freely and don't have to worry about what candid remarks they make to one another coming back to them later. But you're right that there's a kind of a, well, I don't know. There's a kind of an isolation booth that descends on each of those tables, and I hear this from the very few leaks that we're hearing. We're not even getting very many leaks out from this uh, synod, which
oh,
surprises me, and I'd like to get to in a bit.
Bob, I mean, when you look at the regulations that have come out regulations regarding communications, this is a very specific part of the document. It came out last year and is also true this year. You are not supposed to talk to anyone outside of your table of what you said. There's supposed to be this strict confidentiality. So we obviously, you and I both know people have spoken to the media. Obviously, Vatican News does the summary, but sometimes, if you, the journalist, want to talk to someone that Vatican News has interviewed, you will be told, "Well, I talked to Vatican News, and that's enough." So there is not this tremendous openness. You are not supposed to even refer to your own speech, to your
Hmm.
own comments when you and I don't know if this is going to happen, but this is not all of this confidentiality bit is supposed to stay true after the synod.
Right,
But I'm sure
right.
you're going to have bishops and lay people publish their papers for sure.
Yeah. Well,
So
look, as I
it is a
often say,
very, very different synod.
we're not supposed to know who voted or what the votes were in a conclave, and yet we do eventually find out such things. So I think we will. As I said, this is
Exactly.
October 22nd, and it's Tuesday in this final week of this second session of the Synod. And I just learned today because the draft of the final document came out yesterday. And to my great surprise, there have been no leaks. And I learned just this morning that the documents were not sent out electronically. In other words, they were not. It was not a Word file that was emailed to all of the participants. It was sent out as a paper document, and the participants, the delegates, were told that they were forbidden to photocopy it, to take pictures of it, or to reproduce it in
Yes.
any other way. And so, again, much to my surprise, because you and I have been around in other instances like this, and Rome is infamous for there not being leaks, but even like fire hoses of information coming out. It's astonishing that
Yeah.
this degree of control over information is being exercised in a synod that is supposed to be consultative and open and transparent.
No, it's as if
So,
these are a whole bunch of people who have been told that there will be pictures taken and shown of them, but this all has to remain behind closed doors. We can't find out until he's dead that the patient had cancer. And I think if you and I even knew why there have not been any leaks, we can suspect. If there was a paper copy and it's the only copy that I, a Synod participant, have, I'm not, well, of course, I could go out and photocopy it, but email would be too easy to reproduce to get out there to friends and the media. But I think if we knew exactly why, our stock would go up greatly, the Joan Lewis stock and Robert Royal stock. But so you kind of want to ask yourself, I referred a minute ago to this idea of the confidentiality of people really. I really don't know that uh, why no one decided to leak it, and I think, it's pretty much like last October. I think when we look at the final document, which was leaked, and we did learn because of that leak that a lot of the people the participants in the synod, when they went to vote, they felt that the leak was being maneuvered by somebody in a certain direction, like maybe women deacons that they're talking about this year. So, are people staying away from leaks in order to actually stay on the truth of what they're hearing in the synod? It's hard to say why it hasn't been leaked, but Bob, give it 24 more hours because we've got days. Saturday, there everybody's going to it's going to be read out loud, the final document, because this is the draft. There have to be amendments. Last year, there were 1,300 amendments
yeah.
to the final document. That takes a while to put them in, look them over, find out what is a duplicate, put them into the final document. Then it'll be read out loud Saturday and voted on Saturday afternoon, and the synod ends with Mass on Sunday. So this big, big secret, and but like you said, we're going to find out. We're eventually going to know.
Is there anything so far that has really surprised you other than what we've talked about? Because I have to say, there are many journalists have already left. A lot of people seem to have lost interest. The very few that actually had interest up to this point. There have been a few scuffles around the edges just this past week. The group that was meeting on deaconesses was supposed to. There's something like 100 people showed up to make recommendations and interact with that group, and Cardinal Fernandez did not show up because he had a medical problem and says he was being treated.
Well,
But there
actually,
seems to
yeah, actually, he was not scheduled to go to this meeting to talk about women deacons or to talk about the question of women in the church. He was not scheduled. Actually, it was supposed to be the secretary of the discipline section of the dicastery for the faith that Cardinal Fernandez has. It was supposed to be that secretary who was going to go to the meeting and speak for the dicastery. However, he had an operation, and so he could not go. So that secretary appointed two other officials. So everybody was disappointed. They felt like they were getting short shrift, but the cardinal was very upset that they were upset with him because A, he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place, and B, if, they had a medical emergency. What can you do in a case like that? So he certainly stood his ground on that topic. But it's very interesting. One of the things that I'm fascinated by is the look at decentralization in the church. In other words, the power and authority. And part of that upsets me, really makes me ask, is the suggestion that maybe even the teaching of the doctrine of the church should not be from here in Rome, but should be in the hands of an Episcopal conference or individual bishops. I mean, let's talk about opening a can of worms. How many bishops do we have in the world? 4,000. what do you want to have? 4,000 different approaches to doctrine? I don't think so. Because then, Bob, we would no longer be the Catholic Church, Catholic meaning universal. So,
Right.
some of the suggestions, it was interesting. I thought this time that young people were asked not to participate in the synod, but young people were talked to. There was engagement with young Catholics and asking them their opinions, because young Catholics are the church of today, and they will be the church of tomorrow. They will be the leaders of, like we have in the U.S., of parish councils. And isn't a parish council, in a way, which we have and many other countries
Synodal.
don't? But
Yeah, synodal.
uh, it's the synodal, exactly. It's the in right from the pews of your parish up to your pastor, and then eventually important things obviously get through to the bishops. So I think America, if we understand synodality. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but the first day of the synod, it was, I don't remember who revealed this, a group of prelates actually asked the Holy Father to provide an official Vatican definition of the word synodal, because they said there's so
Good
many
luck.
people sitting
Yeah,
here, and Bob, we haven't had that. So,
yeah.
you and I can have
Listen,
our definition, and so can the other 368 participants.
right. Listen, our time is
Yeah,
getting short. I like to keep these podcasts short, but I want to ask you to speculate about another fact that just came out in the last day or so. Um, there's been a kind of an extension of this synod. First of all, we thought we were going to have one session last October. And this was kind of the whole idea of synodality just popped out of nowhere during the 2018 Synod on Youth. No one had talked about synodality, but the document that came out, the second half, was all about synodality. And one can only assume that that was intended to be put into the hopper along the way before that synod. So we were supposed to have this one, these various consultations around the world, and then there was last October. And then the Holy Father said, look, this is just too big. And now we're going to have a second October meeting, which we're in the midst or toward the end of right now. And even before we got here, he decided to empower 10 study groups to handle
yeah,
various delicate or complicated questions. And they're not going to report until June of 2025. And I noticed
exactly.
just in the past couple days that the Gregorian University has announced that there is going to be a 3-day conference on the meaning of the synod in the days following the synod here in Rome, that is going to include Cardinal Hollerich, who's the general relator, I think, of the synod, Cardinal Mario
Yeah,
Grech, who is Hollerich is the general rapporteur, Grech is the general relator of the synod. And then there are two other priests who are assistant secretaries of the synod. So this is, the very highest level of the synod. People are going to be talking about the relationship of this synod to the ecclesial vision of Vatican II. Is this the mature fruit? The conference is supposed to be about the mature fruit
well,
of the
and the
ecclesiology
word
of
fruit is
Vatican
very
II.
important in what you just said. Yeah. No, the word fruit is very important, because it was in October of 2022 that the Pope announced that in 2023 there was supposed to be this October month-long synod, but I have decided to prolong that and also have the synod. We're going to be finishing up our work looking at the fruits of the Spirit that have come from all the meetings from 2021 in parishes, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess maybe the final document and post-synodal apostolic exhortation by the Pope, they may tell us what those fruits are. But Bob, all I can say is, I think the question on everybody's mind now is, will this synod ever
Ever
end?
end.
And all I can think of is, if synodality is walking together, that's part of the phrase that's used a lot. Um, will will that end? I mean, if things just get prolonged, will people get kind of tired even of synodality? But I guess my point, when you depart on a journey, walking together, you know what? You eventually want to get to your destination.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that destination right now is a mystery.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to put it, and a good point for us to end, because certainly the way that it is telescoped into longer and longer different events and different formats and whatnot. I don't think it solely is a question of prolonging the process. I have a feeling that since there hasn't been very much in the way of concrete fruits, that they keep hoping that something else is going to come of it. And my guess is that this connection to Vatican II is to say that, this is the culmination of what the Council Fathers meant at Vatican II. But as
Yeah.
you rightly say, it's a mystery. We'll have to wait for the answer to that question. Joan, thank you very, very much. It's always good to see you and
If
to
I
have you
bring
on
a
the
big
program here
enough,
with
bring
us.
a big enough basket. Yeah, right. I'm going to say if I bring a big enough basket, there will be room for some fruit.
Okay,
Well,
very
God
good.
bless you and your work.
Well, all right. Thank you very much, Joan. It's always good to see you. And thank all of you who are listening or watching this podcast. I always sign off by encouraging you to subscribe to The Catholic Thing, which is a daily column series. And by column, I mean it's only 1,000 words, so you don't have to spend all morning sorting through a very long article, but it's 1,000 very carefully argued words about something that's of serious importance to the church right now. You can subscribe for free, although donations are not refused. You can subscribe for free by going to www.thecatholicthing.org. We hope to see you there, and we hope to see you back here next time.